Hi, welcome back. My name is Shahid Juma. Welcome to the Reaching Your Full Potential Online Summit, where top experts share their secret tips to stand out from the crowd and how to use technology to be uber successful. Today, I'm honored to have Patrick Gallagher from GridPane, and I will let him actually introduce himself. So, Patrick, why don't you go ahead?
All right. First of all, thanks for having me. As you said, I'm Patrick Gallagher. I'm the co-founder and CEO of GridPane. GridPane is a software as a service that helps serious WordPress professionals with the hosting side of their business. And I launched GridPane in February 2018. And before that, I ran my own technology and marketing consultancy for about 13 years, built hundreds of WordPress websites, and used pretty much every host in the world, certainly all the bad hosts, and even a few good ones. And ultimately decided about 5 years ago that I needed a definitive solution for myself and for my customers in the WordPress hosting space. And so started creating a set of tools internally that ultimately became what GridPane is today. So.
No, that's pretty amazing. And being a GridPane user myself, I find that's a pretty neat tool. So yeah, that's really good. So Patrick, you mentioned something about how you've been in 13 years in the industry and also building GridPane. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the journey, on that journey to build where you are today, and kind of some of the struggles and also success that you've had with it.
Sure. Again, I've been building WordPress sites, I think, since version 2, give or take. At the time, I worked for a real estate company, so I went to college for computer science. Was working at like a Best Buy store before there was the Geek Squad. I was in the Geek Squad, fixing people's computers, and then ultimately started doing sort of on-site consulting for people, small businesses, going and setting up networks and helping them get online and build websites and the like. And so while I was working at this real estate company, they had nearly 100 agents that worked there, and a lot of them wanted their own website, something above and beyond what it was that the company provided them. And so that was what really got my beak wet into building site period, but specifically building inside of WordPress. And over the years, just got better and better and better at that. And then ultimately, while doing that, inevitably, if you do enough of that, if you build enough websites, you're going to use hosts from really all across the country, all across the globe, and certainly across all different price points. And generally, people like to not spend very much money on that aspect of their online presence. So invariably, you're going to end up having bad hosting. Mm-hmm. And whether it's hosting that you've secured for yourself or for your clients, or it's hosting that they bring with them and it comes along for the ride. So it was probably around 2014 or 15 when I decided I'm going to start dabbling a little bit with sort of building my own solutions. I knew that the big WordPress hosts out there, like the WP engines, that they were ultimately contracting with what are known as infrastructure as a service providers, IaaS providers, like Linode. And so I just swam upstream using that knowledge and ultimately set up a number of servers with Linode, just as some of the biggest players had. And then Christmas 2015 rolls around, and there was this massive distributed denial of service attack that hit every Linode data center in the world. So I thought I was being real smart and not having all my eggs in one basket, because I had a server in Dallas, I had one in Newark, I had one on the West Coast, I had one in London. Well, they all went down at the same time, no matter what, because that entire company got hit globally, and so all my customer sites went down, all of some other big hosts out there, all their sites went down as well. And I really decided that I had to grow up, I guess, and that we needed a much more serious solution that wasn't reliant on any one provider. We already had sort of the geo-redundant part figured out, that you don't physically locate all your sites in one data center. You keep them located all around the world. But we needed something that was sort of provider agnostic as well. And really, so it was ultimately Christmas Day, having all my sites go down and having to email all of my customers, many of whom are like, what, chill out, go have a beer, relax, eat some more turkey. It's not that big of a deal. Well, it was a big deal to me. That day was sort of the beginning that, is the seed of what became a lot of the foundational elements of GridPane. Is just deciding I was not going to have anyone, whether it was my customers or my providers or my vendors, or even, industry players that were like, well, 99.9% uptime is really good. That's totally ample. And sure it is for most people, but I don't know, in certain regards, I'm very normal, but in other regards, I'm not, and I'm not most people in this regard. And so 99.9% isn't good enough for me, when I know that much better is attainable. And so after falling on my face multiple times in trying to get things right, we had certain things that just sort of clicked. And then those building blocks became what is now our platform, which is GridPane. And so we have cool things baked into our platform now, like Snapshot Failover, that specifically mitigates problems like that. Like your entire data center can go down, your entire provider can go down, and instantly your site fails over to a totally different provider in a totally different region, and your customers never even know that you have any downtime. And so usually it is catastrophic failure that points us towards a better way forward. So
right. No, that's amazing. That's good to hear, because I obviously, you hit it point on where bad hosting, right? So that's definitely a good way to to have a proper hosting, and like you said, infrastructure provider base, which is pretty amazing. So which is not, I guess, normal, right? I don't think people think about thinking just did different data centers is good enough, but that's a that's a good point for sure. Based on what you've done so far with GridPane, what are your future goals in that, and where do you kind of see that going?
Yeah, so when we started, I never really thought of us as becoming some massive company. I still don't think, when I picture the future, I don't picture tens of thousands of customers and, massive teams all over the world. But, just 2 years ago, it was me and one other guy part-time. And I think we just hired number 15 in our company. And we have people we have 4 people here in the United States, but we have people in Kenya, we have people in China, we have people in the Ukraine, we have people in Germany. We didn't plan on becoming this sort of massively distributed company, but I guess that's a good problem to have, that we have people in all these various time zones, and we have to try and coordinate and figure out how to work together. But I think what I want us to continue to do is I want us to continue to build the right tool for the job and help our customers achieve what it is that they want. Again, everything that this company came out of a need that I saw for myself, for my own agency business. And a lot of our customers sort of fit a similar mold. They build dozens of websites every year, or they have potentially hundreds or even 1,000 or 2,000 sites that they manage. We want to keep making tools that help save them time, help them get more leverage out of their dollars, their effort, their sweat. And so I think if we do that, if we continue to do that, I don't know what the future holds. I think that it will be positive for us and for them. And who knows how far we'll want to scale things. I mean, when we started, it was, let's build this tool. But now it's really, we have this sort of ecosystem, and we have this culture building internally, and we have our diehard fans like yourself. And it's incredibly humbling seeing that growth, especially since it's all been just organic. It's all just sprung out of us trying to help people, and so we're fortunate enough that we're funded by our customers. We don't have outside investors that we have to answer to. So there's never going to be a point where we have to say, well, the stakeholders want this, so we have to raise the prices, or we have to cut costs, or we have to decrease the quality of our support. That's never going to happen. And so I see a virtuous feedback cycle between us and our customers of taking the feedback that they want, improving the platform, getting more feedback, and just marching forward on that flywheel. And so I don't know. I guess my hope is that we continue to be frustrating to all the right people, I guess, which is people in our space, in sort of the managed WordPress hosting space, that are perfectly fine with the status quo. Like I don't have any aspirations of taking food off of somebody else's table, but I think that people that are comfortable with status quo, or their business relies on the status quo, I'm perfectly satisfied with the idea of making things interesting for them.
Ah,
So
that's good. Good. No, for sure. I definitely see value in it, and I do think there's as you said, like there's probably more to come. Maximizing the use of it as well in GridPane for myself and others as well that use it. So, definitely amazing stuff in that. If you kind of look at today's climate, obviously we're in a very different situation right now. We're unique actually situation, and this is a question I ask pretty much everybody. How do you adapt and innovate, especially in today's climate?
yeah, so it has been, in some regards, these changes and just the global impact that COVID has created, for travel, for connecting with people. In a lot of ways, we were really well suited for that. We were already a distributed company, mostly because we needed to have 24/7 support. That was a big reason, and also because we had customers that were interested in us all around the world. In the first year, 18 months, 2/3 of our customers were outside of the United States. That's just organically where a lot of the interest came from. And so it made sense to have people awake in those time zones that could serve those people. But I think that it is harder to really stay connected with your team and with your customers when you physically can't shake their hands. My co-founder, he lives in China. He lives out of Shanghai. He's originally from the UK. We were really looking forward to WordCamp EU this year. It was going to be in Portugal. I was going to be flying in from the United States. He was going to come in. He's going to go see his family in the UK and then come down to Portugal. And obviously, all those plans are kaput. And so we had other people on our team that we had never physically met, that we planned on meeting at that time. And so, just like every other company in the world, we're doing lots of Zoom calls, we're doing lots of, go to meeting stuff, we're doing lots of webinars, and it's not the same feeling. But I think that physically getting on the phone like this, face to face as much as possible, not texting each other, not just sending emails back and forth, this kind of stuff has to happen. But both with your customers and your team, and it has to happen a lot more.
Right.
Whereas it would have worked for members of my team to just pop each other a message 2-3 times a week, I think it's a lot more important that we see each other, that things don't get lost in translation via email or endless Slack messages. And I think you just have to put more time and more empathy into the process of communicating and connecting with people, because you can't fist bump, you can't share a drink after a meeting, and that's stressful for people. You don't have that sort of cathartic release of even being able to talk about the challenges of COVID, or how it's impacted your life, or how it's impacted your extended family, and so on. So I think it just takes more work. And so in some ways, you have all this automation and you have this efficiency behind Zoom that I think is completely counterbalanced by the fact that you have to put more effort in, and you have to really try and ask more questions of the people that you work with, whether it's employees, whether it's people that pay you, or your customers. You have to really try and put yourself in their shoes as much as possible. And it's hard to do when you can't physically break bread with each other, and you can't physically attend the same events. So it just takes more patience and more effort. Which is sort of the equation for all of life and business, I guess, in a way, is
Right.
just take your time, don't make assumptions, put in the effort, put in the work for the relationships that matter to you. And if you're genuine in that effort, I think that it's hard to lose, if that's where you put your focus. So
That's true. No, it's good points for sure. It's definitely interesting, and you have to definitely work harder. Definitely, I think during these times for sure. I'm going to go back to your GridPane and kind of ask you some of the questions that in terms of especially like the struggles, or like what are some of the mistakes especially that you wished you could have avoided in building, I guess, where you have and if you were to look back.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. I think that normally I think people ask that question the wrong way. They ask you to look back and talk about, what are some of the things that happened where you knew that it was going to work. I think the much better question is the one that you've asked, which is, if you had to do it all over again, what are the 3 or 4 things that you would have done wrong, or would have done differently? Because certainly if you have where we are, I think that we've been incredibly fortunate to make it as far as we have. And, you know, I hope 5-10 years from now, I look back and go, you know, we hadn't done anything at that point. But one big thing that interestingly, I wish I had done different right out of the gate was the way that I structured my company, specifically building here in the United States. If you're going to create sort of a traditional software as a service company, the standard logic, hands down, the Y Combinator logic is you create a Delaware C Corp. Okay, you incorporate in Delaware and you go a traditional C Corp route. I didn't start that way. I started as an LLC, and ultimately that was a multi-thousand, nearly $10,000 mistake. And it took a lot of time. It wasn't just the money, the legal expense, but it took a lot of time, and it was a lot of stress and aggravation when I didn't need it. What's interesting about that is we're not at all a traditional software as a service, in the sense that we have not taken outside investment, traditional VC outside investment. So the only reason that most software as a service founders would say you have to go the C Corp route is so that you can then subsequently fundraise. And we haven't done any of that. The reason I would suggest that most software founders, or really tech founders period, go that direction is if you are going to grant your employees options, which I highly recommend that you do, you really want to go that way, that route. Okay. And so my opinion is, whether you fundraise or don't, and I have a lot of reasons why you shouldn't, and I'm really glad that we didn't in any traditional sense. Regardless of that, you're very likely going to have people on your team, or you're going to want to have people on your team who actually hold a piece of the company. And the best, most tax advantageous way for you to do that for them is to have options, to be able to grant them options. And you really have to go sort of the C Corp route here in the States. I can't speak for how that works in Canada or anywhere else, but I'm sure that there's similar structures and similar courses of action. I guess sort of in that same vein, another big mistake that consumed at least 6 months of my time was I spent too much time going down the route of looking at traditional venture capital investment. And where I am, I'm in Michigan. Michigan in the Midwest, I would say, is not really suited for traditional software as a service investment. They're suited for technology investment, if that technology is pharmaceutical or medical devices or biotech or agritech. Tons of experience in this region around that type of technology, not nearly the same experience level of traditional sort of Silicon Valley software as a service or internet-based lean startups. And so I spun my wheels in this area for 6 months and chewed up a lot of sleepless nights trying to check boxes for people who ultimately didn't understand how to grow a company like this, didn't understand what my customers wanted. And then the instant that I got in front of the right people in Silicon Valley, they're like, what are you talking about? They want what? they want a 5-year projection? Like that. Why? What could they possibly hope to learn from a projection which isn't going to be valid 6 months from now, you know? So so I guess I would say know your market, know your customers really well. And if you are going to have to fundraise, understand that your customer is those investors. And so it's really important that you know the landscape, know who they are, know how it works where you are. And ideally, if you can, avoid that outright and just focus 100% on satisfying your actual customers, because all fundraising is basically just kicking the can on solving those real problems, which is, how do you get customers? How do you satisfy them? How do you serve them? How do you delight them? How do you get them to return? Those are all the problems that companies that have Series A, Series B, Series C money, but no profits, they're still trying to solve those problems, which if you can just stay zeroed in on those things right out of the gate, you're going to be a lot better off, whether you raise money or not. If you fundamentally need to raise money or choose to raise money, you're going to be in a much better position to be able to do that if you've solved sort of those inherent problems of a startup, which is customer-centric problems. So hopefully that makes sense.
That's a really good tip for sure, especially those who want to start and want to kind of know where to go, what steps to take. That's definitely good tips for sure. And I guess in every country it'll be kind of similar steps too as well, but you're 100% right too. So obviously a few more questions. Like when you talk about GridPane, and obviously you mentioned you built it based on the need that you needed, that you required, um, and as you started building it, how did you handle adversity and doubt when you were building this?
Yeah, so that's a tough one. I would say to a certain degree, I think that I was fortunate to be a bit older, I guess, than a lot of people who get into a sort of a traditional software startup. I think a lot of people picture people in college, 20, young teenagers and young 20 somethings, starting companies. And that's certainly a strong demographic if you're looking at West Coast United States. For me, I started GridPane, really dove into it when I already had kids. I'm going to be 40 in a couple of months, and I think if you're older, if you've had kids, if you've had unfortunate experiences where you've seen family members die, you've lived some life, I think it's a lot easier to mitigate the adversity, what people think of as really, really tough challenges that can come about as a result of business or having deals fall through. I mean, I think if you've experienced really challenging issues, whether it's personal health issues or family health issues, or you've worried about, an infant who's fallen off of something, like I think that your perspective is just completely different, and you ultimately, you don't sweat the small stuff, and you realize that most of the things within business, like, yeah, there's always potentially complete existential threat that's right around the corner. But, I look at everything that I have invested, which is literally hundreds of thousands of dollars of my wife and I's own money. I went nearly 3 years without paying myself a salary, at least 3 to 4 years of serious effort. If it all fell apart, it's like, well, okay, I know exactly what I would do the next day, whereas if something really bad happened, like to one of my kids, it's like, I don't know what I would do the next day. And so I think that again, it sort of comes back to the idea of just perspective and patience, and knowing that you're gonna get your teeth kicked in a lot. That needs to become your bread and butter. There's a guy I follow a lot. His name's Dan Martell. And it's not his line. I think it's actually a Tony Robbins line, but I got it from Dan Martell. And it's get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like, if you can do that, if you can just literally get to a point where you're not embarrassed about anything, you're not concerned or ashamed or afraid that somebody's going to tell you no, then that's a pretty powerful position to be in, and all your negotiations, all of when a customer is trying to, hold your feet to the fire and ask for bigger discounts, when you know the value that you deliver to them, then it's easy to say no, and I think you've just got to stick to your guns. And so that's a hard thing to do when you're 20 years old, and if you haven't had someone say no to you a lot, the first time hurts. If you've never been shot down for the dance, then it's like, that sucks, that hurts. But it's like, yeah, it's just a lot of times what people don't understand is that when someone tells you no, they just mean no right now. They just mean no for this deal today. And a good example of this is, so if you follow like investor gurus, venture capital people, there's a guy named Brad Feld who wrote sort of the definitive kind of Bible of investing, or for venture capital investing. And he has a story where I think he passed on Airbnb twice, 2 separate occasions. He passed on Airbnb, and like early, so he could have gotten it for pennies on the dollar. And it was ultimately, he was having a really bad day that day. The first time it happened, his cat got run over, or something bad happened that had nothing to do with the deal. And he just said no that day. And it stuck in his mind, that no, to the degree that he said no the next time. Also when his cat had not been run over on that day, or whatever bad thing had happened, and then the third time he went, what was I thinking? And so far too many people take every no as just like a fatal, that's it, it's done, it's over, that person's never going to invest with you, or that customer is never going to be a customer of yours. It's like, no, they're just not going to be a customer today. So clean yourself off. You get to feel bad about it for a little bit, but then get your ass back in the game, you know? So.
It's true. No, it's good. Good. Definitely true. Valid points there for sure. So, if you, what is one tip you can share with us that if you can implement today, that you to have success, that you can share with us? Yeah.
Sure. So I mean, for us, it's not a simple cut and dried, just this one tactical will guarantee you success, but it has been a consistent strategy for us that has been huge for GridPane. If somebody said, what is the one thing that you've done really well that created a lot of customers for you? It was, we found the Facebook groups where our ideal customers were, and we added a lot of value there. That's it. You can write it down on a bar napkin, find where your customers are or your prospect customers are. Facebook groups makes it really easy because they're named in a certain way that, for example, there's a WordPress hosting Facebook group. There's 15,000 people in that group. I would guess that 50+% of our customers have come from that one group. And the only thing that we consistently did was we showed up and we answered people's questions. It wasn't, hey, check us out. Here's the promo, here's the sale. That's what everybody else was doing, And so we were able to constantly be juxtaposed against that, where it's somebody comes and asks a question to which every host in the business says, we're the answer. And we would show up and just answer their actual question, And sometimes that meant pointing them to a competitor. We did that very, very consistently, and we did it for a long period of time. And now we have authority and trust established in that group and 20 more just like it. And so it's sort of the long, the slow, fast way, I guess. It's establish reputation by establishing reputation, such that if you want to, then you have sort of you've earned the right to be able to talk about your thing in a semi-promotional way. And I think you can't fake that kind of marketing. You can't, because it's not marketing. It's just, hey, I saw you had a question about that thing, and you give them the answer, Right. And so now there's people who sit around and wait for us to answer things. Like they're waiting to see what we'll say to that question. And it's because we've authentically shown up. And we've done it for years. And so it's something that you can do for $0, which most startups don't have a lot of dollars. They have more time that they're able to allocate than money. And it's the kind of thing that once you have it, no one can take it away from you. If you have a good reputation and you maintain it, people can't take it away from you. They can steal your features, they can knock off what you're doing, they can copy you, but you can't fake a reputation. And so that's the shortcut, is just go and build it up over years. But it's not easy, but it's simple. It's a straightforward path, and it just takes a commitment. So.
No, thanks. That's a good tip for sure. There's a lot of value in Facebook groups for sure, and that's a good way to actually, add value for yourself. So
Absolutely.
Patrick, thank you again so much for doing this. Earlier we had discussed some of the how you can, those who are listening, some of the offer that you had for them,
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah. So definitely highly recommend if you're listening and you're someone who builds a lot of WordPress websites, or even, just one really important one. We have plenty of users that they only have, one site that they host with us. But if you're someone who your business relies on WordPress, definitely check us out at gridpane.com. All paid plans have a 2-week free trial. But if you're attending here and listening here, we're going to have a code. I don't know, it'll be above the video or embedded somewhere. We'll make sure that everybody gets their next month taken care of as well. And so you get at least 6 weeks to try any paid plan on the platform. And then also, if you ping our support, let them know that you attended this event. If you've never had an account with, say, DigitalOcean or Linode or Vultr or any of the data center providers that we natively link to, we usually have their best promotion available as well. So you can test everything 100% risk-free. Kick the tires. I highly recommend, the way that we earn our business is literally by just having people show up, test it out, hit up our support when they get stuck, and see what they see. you know, so that's what I recommend. And hopefully we can make it as risk-free and easy as possible. And so we'll make sure that people have the correct links and coupons, codes, and everything else. So.
Perfect. Thanks, Patrick. Thanks. And yeah, we'll keep the links under the video when we post this.
Perfect.
Thanks
Perfect.
again, Patrick, so much for doing this. Wish you the best of luck with GridPane and its future goals, and keep up the great work.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate you having me on. And obviously, if there's any questions that your listeners or attendees have, I'm happy to do. If there's a follow-up that makes sense, or any kind of future Q&A, happy to do so. Just appreciate you taking the time and exposing your listeners to GridPane. So
Sounds good.
thanks,
No,
man.
thank you. Thanks again.
All right, take care. Yep. See ya.
Take care. Bye.